Well, I would like to welcome Vanessa Matthews, who is with us from the UK. She lives in the south of the UK. We were just discussing how beautiful it is where she is near the sea.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Vanessa is a motivational mindset and business coach. She's also an author, public speaker, housewife, and a mother of four kids. And she is the founder and CEO of the Housewife Revolution. And basically, today we're going to talk about successfully transitioning from housewife or stay at home mom to a business owner, which obviously is a huge focus of the entire conference. So we are very happy to have you here today, Vanessa. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I was delighted actually when you popped up and suggested that I might be a good fit. So no, thank you for having me.
Well, I could just listen to you talk all day. I love English accents.
Yeah. Mine's not quite the Queen's English, but it's close enough. It's fine.
Well, I doubt most of us would know exactly what the Queen's English sounds like, so you're okay. Um, how did the Housewife Revolution come about, and can you just give us a little bit more information about the concept as a whole?
Yeah, sure. So the Housewife Revolution is about supporting aspirational housewives, really. So housewives who want a bit more for themselves, who want to build a business that benefits themselves, their families, that create more wealth for their families, and start to make a serious financial contribution to the household, and businesses that they love, really. And I say aspirational housewives, I guess, because lots of women are very, very happy in the role of traditional housewife, and what I do isn't about actually disrespecting that or being negative about that, or trying to say that that's wrong and this is right. It's just that actually, in my experience, and increasingly for women that I talk to, there are also lots of housewives out there for whom the traditional stay-at-home model or mold isn't quite enough for them. So for me, I gave up my career in 2009 to make the decision to become a stay-at-home housewife and mom. I'd got three kids by then, and prior to that, I'd had quite a long-standing career in PR. I'd had, done some lovely glamorous work, really exciting things, lots of achievements. I'd run my own PR business for the 7 years prior to that, so from 2002 until 2009, and made the decision for various reasons, really. By the time I'd got three kids, it was all getting a little bit hectic to balance. We'd got a huge mortgage. We were under a lot of kind of financial pressure. Generally, everything was not feeling good, and like I was doing it because I enjoyed it. It felt a lot of pressure. So at that point, we made the decision to sell up. We moved to the coast where we live now, and my decision at that time, I thought everything I wanted was to be a housewife and to sort of step out of the business world. And it turned out that that wasn't really what I wanted at all. And actually, I found that it just wasn't for me. I wasn't cut out for that life at all. I find no joy in keeping house as such. I mean, I'm not sure anybody does. I don't know, maybe. But no real sense of satisfaction in that. And of course, having kids is wonderful, and supporting your children and your husband is a lovely thing to do, and I love them all dearly. I do, but I just missed having something for myself, and I found that over time I became a bit of a shadow of myself. And I think who the woman I used to be is a thing I found myself saying quite a lot. I used to do this, I used to do that, and actually I'd forgotten who I was now, and I'd got so used to serving everybody else that I'd kind of forgotten how to serve myself, really. So I had a bit of a light bulb moment, which led to the revolution. And this was I'd stepped out to go shopping. I'd gone to get something for the children, as always, very rarely for myself, and I'd stepped out that morning, sort of, wearing brown, something nondescript and brown and old, and not really, hair scraped back, no makeup on, no real effort. And I've always been somebody who likes to make an effort, typically. And I just kind of felt invisible that particular day. I don't know why. It just really, really was. I was really feeling it, and I wasn't really feeling myself. And I was wandering around, and I just happened to go into a department store while I was in town. I just thought I'll just pop in there and have a look, as you do. And I saw this incredible pair of boots on the shelf, and they were designer boots, and they were beautiful, kind of thing that I would have, bought in a heartbeat when I had money before, when I had financial independence before, and that kind of thing. And I sort of admired them, had a little look, and then I put them back because I thought of all the reasons why I couldn't justify spending on myself, investing in myself, and I couldn't have them, so I put them back. And then as I put them back, I noticed that they had a bit of gold on the soles, and I thought, oh, that's nice, and I turned them over. And on the bottom of the shoe, there was an inscription that read, "Cinderella is proof that a new pair of shoes can change your life."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I kind of laughed at myself. It just caught me completely, and I almost laughed at myself. I mean, there I was, kind of low self-esteem, not really, dressed in rags, I guess the equivalent. I kind of turned myself into Cinderella. It was ridiculous, and I kind of realised that at that moment, really, that I can't go on like this anymore. I can't keep putting things back and not feeling that I deserve to have what I want out of my life. And so it was just really, really symbolic for me, and it kind of just hit me in the gut. So I decided really in that moment that I was going to buy those boots and I was going to make a change, and that was enough. And they actually were going to be the pair of shoes that changed my life, which is ridiculous. But they and it all kind of snowballed from there. I've got them here actually. If you want to see them. There's the gold on the bottom. And there's a
Ooh,
little inscription on the bottom, and they're very beautiful, and they have a
they
beautiful
are
kind of
nice.
lining inside. They're all very lovely, but it really was that thing, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to wear those boots, and I'm going to go out, and I'm going to start talking to people, and I'm going to start coming back to who I was and get myself together. So in a nutshell, that's what it was about. So I knew that there must be other women like me, and of course there were, and the more I talked about it, the more I found lots of women who felt the same, really. And so I decided that not only did I need to revolutionize myself, I needed to pull all of my skills and resources together and start to help women like me, and start a revolution for them too. So because I know what it feels like to be capable of so much but have no outlet for your creativity, your intelligence, your ambition. I know what it feels like to lose your identity. I know what it feels like to feel as though you used to be somebody and now you're not. Also, other things. I know what it feels like to not have disposable income and how frustrating that can be. My husband's very giving, but he works really hard, and I used to feel just bad watching him work 60 plus hours a week, to be the sole financial provider for our family. And here I was with all this capability and I wasn't doing anything with it. So it was a strange one. I willingly went into this situation, and I could willingly step out of it at any time. I'm just not sure what took me so long for the alarm bell to go off, really, for me to realize I could do this years ago. But
Yeah. I completely understand. That's basically how I got back into working too, is that I was at home and I love the flexibility of being at home. I love being able to be there to help my kids when they get home from school,
yeah,
but it wasn't enough.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
I,
I think just knowing you don't have to be unhappy anymore. You don't have to, I had got to a point. I'm generally quite a positive person. I look for the positive, and I tried to be. I'm bubbly and lively, but I'd got to the point where I was just unhappy.
yeah.
I could just sit and cry about it all the time because I was just so unhappy, but I couldn't understand why. It wasn't my marriage. It wasn't my children. It wasn't, I went through the list of ticking off, well, it's, there's nothing wrong with him and there's nothing wrong with them. So it's got to be
Right,
me. There's got to be
right.
something else. So, if I can help one other person realize that they don't have to be unhappy anymore and do something for themselves, then I think that's job done.
So great. So what are some of the three, as you're working with people who are making this jump and transition, what are some of the things, maybe give us three important things that you think are necessary for making the transition?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say to housewives in particular is to work on your self-confidence. I think a lot of moms and wives lose their confidence because they are putting the needs of their families ahead of their own all the time. And whether you sell a product or whether you sell a service, you are your business. And so, if you can't believe in yourself, then other people aren't going to believe in you either. So your chances of success narrow considerably if you don't believe in yourself. And I know that's easier said than done. I know there's a lot more work goes into believing in yourself than just saying, oh, I feel confident. But I think if you can work on that first, however you need to do that, however feels right for you, that's really important. Next, I think, so secondly, I think to get really clear on what your business offer is. So
That's a
specific,
huge one for
yeah,
anybody. That's a huge one.
yeah, and it sounds quite obvious in
Yeah,
a way, but it's remarkable how often it's overlooked. Actually,
right.
that people don't really narrow down right clearly what the offer is. And I've made mistakes like that before in the past, and I'm pretty sure I've got it right this time. But but I speak to lots of women all the time, and it's not until you really say, okay, yeah, I understand sort of what you're saying, but what is it that you do?
Right.
And they say, oh yeah, but it's this and it's this, and I think that like this. Okay, but what is it? What is it? What do you do? So it's something like that that I think is really important. And then once you've got clear on your offer, why are you the woman for the job, and who are your customers going to be? So your target audience really. And then finally, I think one of the things that I've found really important is actually making sure that your business is completely aligned with something you're passionate about.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it's an obvious one. It's a cliche in a way that's thrown around a lot. Oh, follow your passion, find your passion, or that kind of thing. But starting and building a business is tough. There's no getting away from that, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of commitment. You might be up till 2 a.m. You might have to work around sick kids. You might have to, all the things that really are going to push you to your limits. And if you're not thoroughly passionate about what you do, those are the times when it's all going to fall apart. And I think there's a difference between knowing that you can do something and knowing that you should do something.
Sure.
So lots of us have skills that we can do, and that's a great place to start. But actually, I have a friend who's a reflexologist, and no, sorry, she's a nurse, but she has qualifications in reflexology, and she's toyed with the idea of setting up a reflexology practice. And I was talking to her the other day, and she said, do you know what's holding me back? And I said, what? And she said, I think it's just because I don't like reflexology. I
That's
can
not
do
the
it.
right business.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, absolutely. She said, I can do it, but I just don't like it. I don't enjoy it. And I said, then you mustn't do it. You can't do it. That's you're wasting your time before you even start. Don't do it. So it's understanding that as well, I think. So really aligning what you love with what you do, because that's what's going to get you going and keep you pushing on through the bad days.
Yeah, I actually just kind of came to that kind of revolution myself recently, that what my business was is I don't really love doing. And I was like, I'm taking time away from my family, I'm investing in this, and I'm not happy. Something's not right. So,
Yeah, and ultimately all that happens then is you end up setting up another set of resentments. So, a
yes,
lot of the reason I was
exactly.
moving away from being a housewife is because I was resenting the fact that I didn't want to do this. I can do it,
Yep.
fine, but I didn't want to do it. And
Yeah.
that's the difficulty. And you end up resenting your business actually, and then you're not happy anywhere because you're sacrificing everything. And it may be successful. It may be a successful business, but you'll resent it because you're unhappy being stretched between the things that you don't like and sacrificing the things that you do love, such as your family or your free time or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So on your website, you talk about the motivational mindset, and this is something that we talk about a lot with a couple different speakers throughout the conference. So, um, how does someone go about getting a motivational mindset? And how do you define that?
I was going to say, it sounds so easy, doesn't it? How do you
Yeah.
get a motivational mindset? You click your fingers and there it is. And, it's all so simple. No, I think, in all seriousness, it takes a lot of work sometimes, actually, depending on where you are, depending on your starting point. It can take a lot of work. But I think the first step is deciding that you've had enough of not feeling motivated. I think that has to be your jump off point, what the trigger to make those changes and to be really committed to making those changes. So for me it definitely was this feeling of I don't want to be stuck anymore, I've had enough of
Yeah.
this. So that's a good starting point. And then I think there's quite a lot of value in choosing your thoughts actually. So rather than looking around and thinking about what you haven't got is, again, sounds a bit cliche, but looking around and thinking much more about what you have got. So, making a decision to focus on the things that are working for you. And that's, so it's not just about going, oh, well, I wish I had money and I haven't got any, and I can't say I've got money because I haven't, or something like that. You can't make it up, but it's, kind of looking around and thinking, well, actually, okay, at the moment I don't have, a new car or this business. I haven't got all the stock that I want and the big shop that I want and everything else, but what do you have? So you've got a set of skills that you could work on. So reminding yourself really of what you do have at your disposal, sorry. So, what skills you have, what contacts you have, who you know, what personal qualities you've got, the support network you've got around you. So things like that can be, a good start in sort of breaking out of those very limiting beliefs. So a lot of mindset issues actually come down to feeling limited, cut off, isolated, and dealing in have-nots rather than haves. So I think that's quite important, and also to avoid working in assumptions. So lots of women say to me, oh, I was speaking to somebody this morning who was saying, oh yeah, but I just don't think there's a market around here for my business. I just don't think that people will be interested. And nobody really wants what I'm selling anyway. And I kind of think, really, is that really true? So where did you get that information from? Do you know that to be a fact, or are you, oh wow, no, have you asked anybody? No, I haven't. You get a lot of that people talk themselves into a negative mindset, actually, without actually having a conversation
Right.
sometimes. Not
Right.
always, but or having the right conversation with the right people, and that's quite key. But quite often you'll look around and think, oh, but nobody around here will pay for my services anyway. Oh, but nobody really wants what I've got to offer. And all of that usually is complete fabrication. That just comes from, in here, your belief systems about
Right.
yourself and the value that you've got to offer. And there's a bigger issue there, actually. So I think that is quite a key one. So educate yourself so you can deal in the facts, and then automatically you'll feel more motivated and empowered to take the next steps that you need.
Sure. So when you start working with a new coaching client, what types of things do you, how do you set the baseline? What types of issues do you work through? How does that all work?
Yeah, so again, that probably becomes quite client specific in a
Sure.
way, depending on where they're coming from. It can be a range of things. For example, it may be that actually just culturally or societally, for clients, they've got family stories or things that actually have prevented them from becoming motivated about something or feeling that they've got a chance of success or something. So,
Yeah.
and often actually these things don't crop up until you're a bit later down the line. Some of the obvious things that people come to me with aren't necessarily mindset issues. They come to me because they want to talk about pricing, or they want to talk about marketing, or they want to talk about practical business strategy stuff, systems, processes, that kind of thing. And then over a period of time you realize that actually that's not what's holding things back at all. You can get that information and everything else, but if you aren't in the right mindset to actually step forward, you're not going to be able to do anything with all of those tools anyway.
Right.
So often once you start to get into that and just ask a few leading questions, I tend to just ask a few leading questions first to find out. So something like this beliefs thing that I was just talking about, um, is based on a real conversation I've had very recently with a lady I was working with who, a lot of the statements were, oh, but people won't. And when I asked the question a bit more, actually then we realised there's a whole bunch of mindset stuff going on
Hmm.
behind that. So it can be quite client specific, but often it's one or two key questions that actually you hear people make certain statements that will come up time and time again during a conversation often give you a big clue to what's going on underneath. So, I don't, I can't, I haven't, that kind of thing, in relation to, and I say it can just be little snippets like that I can pull out of a conversation with somebody and think, oh, okay, what's really going on here? And I don't think actually that this system is your problem. I think your problem is, why do you really think that way? And how can we change that? So,
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions on books or websites or anything like that that somebody who I know I struggle with mindset quite a bit. Are there some places that you would direct us to go, maybe find some exercises or some articles or some help?
yeah, so let me have a think. I was asked this question by somebody else actually just the other day. So some of them are fresh in mind, which is quite handy. I mean, I think any podcasts and things you can get hold of are great for that sort of thing. I know. So I've worked my way through the Boss Moms kind of series as well. That kind of
Yeah.
stuff is readily available. There's quite a lot of resources available for EFT, so the emotional freedom technique. I don't know if you're familiar
Oh,
with that,
I'm not.
which is kind of tapping, and so you tap at the same time as you make sort of certain statements, and it sort of helps. In a nutshell, I mean, I'm not an EFT specialist, but in a nutshell, it helps you kind of redress some of those deep beliefs that you've got and deep blocks and barriers that you've got.
Mhm.
So I would certainly look at that. There's a gentleman called Brad Yates who I've been listening to recently, and I've just found that quite interesting work as well. Um, Books wise, let me have a think. So I mean, I actually, this isn't really a business book at all, but it's a book that I actually thought was really, really valuable, which was Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. I don't know if you've read that.
Oh, I have not.
And it's actually all about creativity, and I bought it because I also do writing, and that was initially my interest in it. But it's very, very much about finding a way to give yourself permission, if you like, to just have fun and explore things without getting too hung up on the outcome, without taking yourself too
Sure.
seriously. So that was a really good read, and I actually found that sort of filtered into lots of different areas too. TED Talks, I'm a huge
Hmm.
of TED Talks. I'm hoping to do a TEDx talk later this year myself. I love them. I'm kind of addicted to them, and you've probably come across them already. But
Love them. Yeah.
uh, yeah, and I think there's loads of sort of little motivational sound bites in there. I mean, ultimately, nothing is as effective as doing the work for yourself.
Sure.
These little things you can pick up are great, and they're great to get you thinking in the right way, and they're great to help you on your way. But you're still kind of piecemealing information together, and I think actually, um, finding the right person to work with who can unlock that sort of stuff in you is much more valuable, because actually we're all individuals, so your story will be different to mine. My blocks will be different to yours. We'll all be coming at it from somewhere slightly different, and we all have different backgrounds and stories and family histories and all the different dynamics that make up a lot of the limiting beliefs and mindset issues that we have. And then, of course, we've got our lifestyles and our personal experiences. And actually, how do you keep a positive mindset when you've been up since 3 a.m, rocking a baby, things like that. So, and that kind of stuff, I think you don't get so much from listening into the sort of quick tip things. But of course, the quick tip stuff is really helpful to get you started.
Sure. Well, I'm going to use the TED Talk as a segue into the next stuff that I want to talk about because
Yeah.
um, you ran a PR firm. You have a lot of experience in PR. You've got a great amount of success in the last year. Before I forget this question,
Yeah.
somebody wants to try and do a TED Talk as a way to maybe get more exposure to themselves and their business, obviously. How would you even go about trying to do that?
Okay, so the bigger TED Talk, so the main TED Talk, as I understand it, is something that actually is a lot tougher. That's a much tougher gig
Sure.
to
You
get.
probably have to be invited to do the big
Yeah, and
ones.
I think you have to have attended a TED Talk yourself in the first place. So that, and I think that involves quite a lot of spend, as far as I'm aware.
Mhm.
TEDx talks actually are magic, because they are locally organised, smaller scale events that still have the same reach or potential reach. Some TEDx talks get over 1 million views just the same.
Yeah.
um, but they are much more accessible. So they take place all over the world. So
Mhm.
generally speaking, you can find TEDx talks, sorry, going on anywhere in the world. Um, and some will have themes, and some will just be open calls. And so, what you actually do, it's an application process.
Okay.
I wouldn't advise going through the application process until you've got your talk together. But
You're
once
right.
you know what you want to talk about, and you've got something passionate, or you've got a thought or an idea or a story that you are desperate to share with the world, then that's the starting place, is having your story. And then secondly, you find the event that works for you. So you can apply to any TEDx event anywhere in the world if you want to. Um, the one I'm waiting to hear on at the moment is actually in Ireland, so it's not where
Oh,
I live. But there was a specific women's focus to this event that attracted me to it and made it interesting. So they happen throughout the year. You find the one that you're interested in attending, whether it be based on geography or based on the theme of the event. And then once you've got your speech, your idea of your talk together, you then find out when the application deadline is, and you submit an application. And then there's a process of going through to be interviewed, and kind of auditioned, if you like, and then
right.
they work with you to help you refine your talk. So there's a process, but actually it's a very accessible process, and I think that's what's fantastic about TED. Actually, is that it's not an exclusive, members only club for the really,
Sure.
for the really important people, or for the haven't got to be in the know to get in there. It's just one of those things. If you've got something to talk about, there is an opportunity for you to apply. And if you don't get through in one, try another one and another one and another one. And keep refining what you're talking about until you get there. Really. So, and that's a theme for PR in general. I think, is just keep working on your story.
Yeah, exactly. Well, good, because I want to talk about PR right now.
Yeah.
So you self-published a book
Yeah.
and wound up doing really, really well with that. So we do have
Yeah.
a lot of writers in the audience. I'd love to hear just some of your tips on PR and marketing for a book, because that's
Yeah.
really tough when you do it on your own.
Yes, dear, yes. Hello, writers everywhere. I feel your pain. I understand. Welcome, welcome. I get it. I get it. Yeah. So I've been traditionally published once before by a sort of indie press, and that was for poetry as a random aside. And that I have to say, and I also have a friend who lives around the corner who is published with a big publishing house, Bloomsbury, and he's done a non-fiction book. And actually, neither of us have experienced anything more support-wise from the publishers than we have from doing it on our own. So I would say
Wow.
if you're chasing publication through a traditional publishing house because you think that that is, the key to getting your market out, your book out there, not necessarily so. I mean, yes, it is for, of course, the big authors that they invest
Sure.
masses of money in, but actually for most people you'll get some kind of advance, and then you're on your own and you're expected to go out and promote and find opportunities for yourself anyway. So that, just to park that to one side. So there are, as far as specific book marketing is concerned, most importantly, it's what I was just saying, I suppose, finding your story. So I have, uh, uh, I say finding your story, I don't just mean the story in your fiction. What I mean is your personal story.
Hmm.
So I don't think I've ever gone out there and been able to sell a book based on, here's my book, this is what it's about, please will you buy it. It doesn't work that way. There are so many, it's so saturated, it's such a saturated market, it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. So what people really want to hear about and are really interested in is your journey, your writer's journey. They want to hear about, what you are passionate about, why you wrote your story, what barriers and stumbling blocks you came across before you finally got to the end of your story. So I've done articles just to talk about why I wrote what I wrote, or my writing process. I've done blog interviews and things where I've talked about, my book happened to be set in the 1920s, so I talked about researching historical fiction. My book
Mhm.
also features a core story about two female friends, and so I wrote a piece, a sort of opinion article about female friendships in literature, and I submitted that out to various places, and that was really well received. So it's thinking more broadly than I've written a book, please will you write about me, because everybody's written a book. So in a sense, do you know what I mean? So it sounds terrible, but you're not that special, and I don't mean that in an upsetting way. I just mean that in a truthful, honest way. You're not that special. So tell me what makes you and your experience more special. So that's one thing. I think, and then developing some kind of authority that suggests that you know what you're talking about. So I've also done quite a lot of top tips kind of work.
Mhm.
I did a thing for Brit Mums, I think it was that one, which was about top tips for writing a novel. Just something, 10 top tips for writing a novel. Really simple, really easy. But and I chose Brit Mums, for example, because it's a website that actually supports mums in Britain. It is what it says on the tin, I guess.
Imagine that.
Yeah, and so obviously I could talk about my experience of being a mom and also being a writer, and that's something relatable, and then give my tips from that place. So that's been a huge part of it. The other thing I would say is asking questions, the power of asking, and also the power of uh, don't feel that you have to give everybody everything. How do I explain this? So with my book, for example, my initial plan was to be traditionally published. That's what I'd set out to do in the beginning. I got
Sure.
really, really close. I got loads and loads of agents. I got loads and loads of interest, but it just didn't quite convert. And I ended up, over a period of months, kind of slowly, one by one, agents were saying, "Oh, I love it, but it's just not quite right for us." And da, da, da. But there were things I couldn't fix, so I couldn't do anything about it. So I just thought, well, I've written it now. It's obviously not rubbish because people are, telling me it's great. I'm just going to publish it and put it out there. Now, to get into the bookstores and things in this country, typically they don't accept self-published books. So I
Mhm.
took advantage of being a local author. So I went into my bookstore. There's a bookstore chain nationally, and I went into my local store of the national chain, and I said, I'm a local author, and this is my book. By that point, I'd already got a lot of book bloggers backing me as well. So I'd got some great reviews. I'd got some, serious stuff. I'd set up some press opportunities already. So I was able to go in and say, look, this is my book. It's doing really well. I'm going to be in this magazine. I'm going to be in that magazine. Will you include me? And they did. So
Oh,
that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have asked the question. It also
Right.
wouldn't have happened if I'd entirely played by the rules. So,
Right.
so what I mean by that is, as I say, the policy, strictly speaking, I think, is that actually self-published books are a bit of a no-go in a mainstream bookstore.
Hmm.
Nobody asked me if it was a self-published book. So
And you didn't divulge it.
yeah, and I would have divulged it if they'd have asked me. But so it's a bit
Sure.
naughty, really. But it's a bit naughty, and that's not necessarily the way to go. But I would say that because I'd done all the groundwork first and got myself lots of press opportunities, I was able to go in there and say, "You are going to sell copies of this book because I'm going to be in this magazine. This is great. You don't want to miss this. This is an opportunity
Hmm.
for you." So that was one element of that. And then also so as far as the magazine articles were concerned, again, I took my story and I used every angle I could find. So I went to Vintage Life magazine, which is a really popular kind of retro publication for girls who like pin-up stories and that kind of stuff. It's very
Right.
glamorous, very fashionable, very lovely. And I went to them and I'd written about the 1920s, and obviously they have an interest in vintage style and vintage fashion. And I went to them and I said, look, I've got this vintage. I didn't call it historical fiction. I said, I've got a vintage story. It's set in the 20s, blah, 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 blah. And, and I'm quite into vintage sort of style myself. So I had some beautiful photographs that I got taken with a vintage kind of styling to them. And I said, here you go. What do you think? And they said, yeah, great. We love it. That's fantastic. I used old contacts that I'd got. So I got the editor of Vogue to read, Vogue UK to read my book, because actually I had approached her a couple of years before about the poetry title that I'd had. I'd failed. I didn't get a feature that time in the poetry one. But I got back in touch and said, oh, seeing as I did get a message back from her to say I really enjoyed it. So I got back in touch and said, do you remember me? Would you have a look at it? Great. So it's things like that that actually started to make a difference. I would say in general, when you're talking about, I'm aware this is a bit of a long answer, but there's quite a lot that went on. I don't want to make it sound like it was all quite straightforward. I
Right.
would say in general, actually reach out and ask to people as well who can raise you up a level. So and always be planting seeds. When I was a blogger, I did some blogging just for fun, really. A few years ago, and it was about writing, and I got a lot of authors. I reached out to some authors that I liked, that I saw on Twitter, people that I thought had got a book to promote currently, and I
Hmm.
asked them to come and be interviewed on my blog, because it was a bit of a win-win. They could get their book promoted on my blog. I got a nice big name author to get more people to my blog, and that was all great. Everybody was happy. End of story. Then fast forward a couple of years, when I'd got a book of my own, and I went back to those authors and said, hey, do you remember me? Do you remember this? Do you think you could help me out? Do you think you could give me a leg up? And they did. They did. So and it was as simple as a shout out on Twitter to say, oh look, Vanessa's book is out today, this is great, go and get it, sort of thing. I got one chap who offered to give me a quote for the cover. Fantastic. Those kind of endorsements. All of that was because actually I'd provided an opportunity a couple of years before, and I decided to be cheeky and ask the question, and I did.
Hmm.
So that I think pays off and has continued to pay off. Elizabeth Gilbert, we talked about her earlier. I reached out to her when I was halfway through writing my book, on her Facebook page, with the little I think I can engine, a little cartoon engine from a cartoon years and years ago, and
Hmm.
I just sent her a message about that and included it because it was super cute, and she replied, and it was just something that gave me a boost, but it also gave me an opportunity to, when I was building my author brand, if you like, to say, look, it's me and Liz Gilbert hanging out. Do you know what I mean? So it's all that kind of stuff that actually helps you up level and raise people's perception of what you're doing. And yeah, in a nutshell, a very big nutshell, that's most of it.
And I'd say that's fairly universal too, whether you're writing a book or just trying to grow your business, building those relationships and finding other opportunities to expose yourself and help others.
Yes, definitely. I have seen that work for business too, absolutely. And I also have plans to reach out to contacts that I have made in the past, in a similar way, through the book, to see if they can help me now with the coaching. So definitely, I think really reach out to anybody. I've been at conferences before where with really, really enormously influential business people, and it's the people that are prepared to stand up in the room and put somebody on the spot and say, I'm here at this conference because I do such and such. Will you mentor me for 6 weeks? And the people on the panel think, oh, okay, I've got to say yes to this because I'm sitting in public. So they say, yeah, okay. And but you're kind of being cheeky, but actually the people often that are prepared to perhaps just have the confidence to stand up and say, can you help me out? are often the people that actually find that they get success. And if nothing else, you learn from it, and you get used to asking. And I think so. Finally, I think, yeah, in business and for writers, the same thing. Also, listen hard and notice everything. Jump on any opportunity that presents itself.
Yeah.
Speaking platforms. If you find an opportunity, I started doing public speaking because I started putting myself forward for literary events. I'd never done one before. When I started out, I was just like, I don't know, I'm going to go along and I'll see how I get on when I get there. But I just did it. I started reaching out to all the literary festivals and saying, hey, I'm a local author, can I come and speak for you? And that's what set the ball rolling for my the speaker stuff that I now do. So trends, interesting topics, things like that you can link yourself to. If there's a TV series, I had, in PR terms, one of my biggest PR successes years ago was off the back of the Desperate Housewives TV series. I was working with a client at the time who was a shoe manufacturer, and they had a different range of shoes, and so I came up with a story that was all about which housewife are you, and if you're I'm trying to think of all their names now. If you're Gabrielle, I think that was Eva Longoria, wasn't it? One of them. You're a pocket princess, and you like kitten heels, and you like this, that, and the other. And it was just really visual, really fun. And the fashion features, people loved it, and they couldn't get enough of it because that series was really popular at the time. So it's things like that. Keep your eye out. Keep a keen eye out for opportunities and fortune and trends and topics in the news that you can highlight to promote your cause effectively, because that's what you're trying to do. And might sound terribly sort of manipulative, but actually it's just, that's how the news works, that's how the media works. And if you can provide something that's relevant, topical, or related to a really good story, then you're going to win every time.
Absolutely. So, if someone doesn't have the same kind of PR hookups as you do, how does someone who's brand new, or maybe not brand new, but just hasn't developed those kind of relationships yet, how do they get started connecting people and kind of cold calling?
Okay, I think the really important thing to point out, actually, about when you talk about connections and relationships, and it is something that I'm aware of when I talk about these bits of press that I've done. It sounds really impressive, and it is, but what I wouldn't want people to sit and think is, oh yeah, but it's okay for you because you did that, you've got a book of contacts. I don't have a book of contacts anymore. I haven't worked in PR actively for about 9 years. No, when did it? So 2009 I gave up. So 7 years. Sorry. Excuse me. So journalists, the world of PR and journalism moves fast. So most of the people that I would have known at the time aren't there anymore anyway. So I understand the techniques and how to get to these people, but I don't know anybody. And I think, don't feel that you have to have a contact to get ahead. It's not really about that. It helps to know a department that you need to talk to. So if you deal in jewelry, for example, there are accessories editors on some of the bigger magazines. That's who you want to talk to. There are, if you've got a lifestyle story, a case study about somebody who's overcome something very difficult, there are features editors that deal with that kind of thing. There are beauty editors and editorial assistants on the beauty desk who will take in product stories. So if you've got a new face cream, or a new pair of earrings, or whatever it might be, or a new candle, then those are the people you start with to go to. So understanding that structure, I guess, of how a magazine works is helpful, but it's not essential. I think one of the most accessible resources that people can use today, literally now, and I can tell you an example of how I used this myself in the last couple of weeks, is get on Twitter and type in the search box the hashtag journo request, and up will pop a load of tweets from journalists who are looking for stories, who are looking for spokespeople, who are looking for product opportunities. They may be writing a thing about, where are we now? We're spring. So they might be looking at spring beauty trends, for example.
Right.
And if you come up saying, I'm looking for, X, Y, and Z person to talk to me about, the hottest spring trends. I'm looking for someone to tell me about the top 10 places to eat in London. I'm looking for somebody to tell me about the top 10 spas around the world. Are you one? Have you got one? So, they come at, some of them are rubbish, some of them aren't very interesting, and some of them are fantastic. So a couple of weeks ago, I came across one that was from a lady who was writing an article for a woman's weekly magazine here, quite a big circulation, Women's Weekly, national magazine, and she was looking for stories of women who had had eureka moments.
Hmm.
So I got in touch with her and I said, I've had a eureka moment. Can I tell you my story about my gold shoes? And I told her the story, and they loved it, and that's absolutely what they wanted. So it's things like that are a free resource that you can use, and I would just say have a really keen eye for how you can wedge your product or service or business into that question. So I would say don't hassle journalists if they don't want to know. If you've tried once or twice and they haven't responded, they're not interested. So move on to the next one and don't waste your time. They're not great at getting back to you always, but if you have a good story, they'll get back to you pretty quickly. That's
Right.
honestly. And I would also say you can put that out there. You can use the journo request hashtag for putting information out there, but journalists don't really respond to it. I see lots of businesses where they say, "Hey, I'm a spokesperson for so and so. If you'd love to talk to me about skincare, get in touch." Journalists don't do that. They are inundated with people wanting to be featured in their magazine. So why would they come and chase you?
Right.
Unless you do something really crazy unusual, they're not going to come after you. So you need to go after the opportunities and find them yourself. So that's one really interesting free resource you can use straight away. Another one, just very quickly, is something called Response Source. And that, if you Google that, you should probably find that. And that's it's not an ongoing free service, but you can get a free trial period, and you can apply and you get set up for alerts to free to journalist requests. You can pick you want to work with. You can pick your target media, so if it's consumer women's magazines, or if it's just bloggers, or if it's just the business pages of national daily newspapers. You get to pick the categories that you want to work in and the subjects that you're interested in, and you will get an email every day telling you what journalists are looking for that day. So those are two really good free tips that you can just take today and run with.
That's awesome. Thank you. I hadn't heard of either of,
Yeah.
or thought of either of those,
I
so
love
that's
that. I love
great.
that when I find something new.
Yes, I know. So what are some of the tools that you use then as far as building your business on the digital platform? Do you have anything? And what I'm looking for here would be like project management tools or accounting software. I know it'll be a little bit different because you're in the UK, but I don't know, maybe your email automation, or is there anything that you use that you just could not do your business without, or that you highly would recommend?
Hmm. At the moment, for me, I'm not a huge fan of automation actually, and I'm really not. I think people these days are so. I understand the convenience um, element for my side of the fence, but I think actually from a customer side of the fence, people are much more savvy these days, and they know when they're being funneled. They know when they're being sold to. They know, we're not daft. We know how to do that, and so. I'm less and less of a fan of automation. So where I can, I would rather interact manually, actually. And I have, MailChimp and that kind of thing to build my email list. But I try to do as little automation as I can. And actually, with a business like mine, I would say that Facebook has been one of the most valuable tools, and that obviously
Yeah.
costs nothing. And that's perhaps not the kind of techie gadgety answer that you were hoping for, perhaps. But I really find that is so valuable as an opportunity to showcase what I do in a less pushy, selly, kind of way, in a more conversational, natural way, which just feels more comfortable to me.
Mhm.
I find it useful as a resource to find information and to be alerted to stuff that's going on out there in my industry. So really, I'm a bit of an old-fashioned girl in that sense, that I keep it quite. I told you I was vintage. That's but by choice, because that's just my preference. I find it personally a much more easy way to do things. I do like Calendly, the calendar
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
app. App? Would you call it app? The calendar
Hmm.
function. I don't know what you call it, but that anyway. So I use that. I think that's really useful. And I am using Teachable to put together a short crash course in PR actually at the moment, which is a side issue. But where possible, I try to minimise having too many bells and whistles and different digital services.
Sure. So what do you have coming up? What's exciting? Where can we find you? What kind of projects do you have going on?
Yeah, so at the moment, there seems to be quite a lot going on actually, which is great. I'm delighted. I'm delighted. So at the moment, I have got in my Facebook group, we've been working through an accountability in April challenge. So I created a 16-page workbook and lots of information about goal setting and mindset mastery and planning and time management and all sorts of things like that. So that's been really thrilling to see ladies all around the world who are sending me photos of themselves with their workbooks or showing me their pages or asking me questions. So I find that really satisfying. That's lovely. So that's kind of at the moment, and that's obviously coming to an end as the month goes through. In terms of things that I've got coming up, as I say, I'm finalising this crash course in PR at the moment. We talked earlier about the things that you can do and the things that you love to do, and actually I can do PR. I don't get away from it. I know how to do it, but I don't offer. I'm not a PR for hire, so I don't offer PR services. But I am aware that I have a huge amount of knowledge and experience, and actually there are lots of small businesses out there who just can't afford to hire the services of even a freelancer, maybe, let alone an agency. So I figured the best thing to do was to actually take all of that out of my brain, put it into a course, and it's there. And if people want it, they can have it, but I don't have to get involved in actually being a PR person anymore. But I still get to share that knowledge. So that's going to be ready by the end of April. So I'll be putting that up on my Facebook page and website and things. So, and then also at the end of April, it's a busy month. I'm speaking. I'm one of 15 speakers talking at an Ambitious Entrepreneurs Virtual Summit. So I'm going to be talking there. It's a bit different to what you've talked about today. I'm going to be talking about the power of dreaming small. So taking the whole kind of get rich quick and a lot of this that we see at the moment, that's kind of, oh, you can make six figures, you can do this, you just don't want it bad enough, that's why you're not getting it. I'm taking all of that and I'm turning it on its head, and it's kind of exploding a few myths there. And so I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'll be following that up with an opportunity for people to work with me on some goal mapping and some dreaming small kind of session work. And then that's it really. So I'm just continuing to grow the coaching business, and I'm waiting on that TEDx talk. I'm hoping for an email any day because it's a bucket list opportunity. So I'm really yes, and we'll see what happens there. So that's kind of where I'm at, I think, at the minute. So busy but fantastic, lots to look forward to.
And what's your website?
Okay, so I am at thehousewiferevolution.com.
And your Facebook page?
Is also she says it's also thehousewiferevolution.com, but if you search it, it comes up. I think it's kind of the Housewife Revolution with a few numbers and things after it, but if you just search for the Housewife Revolution, you'll find me. Great. And then I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter both as my author self, which is at Vanessa Matthews, because that was established a long time ago, and also the Housewife Revolution is on Twitter as well, which is Housewife Revol1, I think.
Okay, great.
All the usual Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was a ton of great information. I took a lot away from it, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the waffling download. There was lots and lots to say.
No, I love downloads. I love good big brain downloads. Thank you.
The opportunity, I appreciate it.
Definitely.